Hey everybody, welcome back again to my channel. Guys, sorry, it's been like 3 weeks since I uploaded, or a little bit longer, but life is busy, but we're here. And today I'm bringing with to you guys another video for my creatives, for my entrepreneurs. And I'm sure, as you can see by the title, today we're talking about taxes and like how to register your business properly and all that stuff, for specifically for creative people like content creators, entrepreneurs, people that are in that sphere. They work for themselves as a creative or whatever, or you want to get into that field, but you want to know how to do, the taxes properly and all that stuff. So I have with me today my good friend. He's also my accountant, Joshua Bacchus, CPA. He's been doing this for years, so he's very knowledgeable on this topic. But before we get into the questions, you know what I'm gonna ask you guys? I'm gonna tell you guys to make sure to subscribe. Make sure to subscribe to this channel so we can grow and watch it all the way to the end. Okay, watch it all the way through and share this video. All right, so like I said, we have Joshua Bacchus. Everybody give him a virtual round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having me, Crystal. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on my channel. If you could just give like a brief introduction of like who you are, what you do.
So as you mentioned, Crystal, I have gained many years of experience, over 10 years experience in the accounting and financial field. Went to college at Humber, then eventually went to Ryerson, and eventually got my designations in the CPA, CFP, and various others to help focus on taxes and estate and financial planning for individuals. Throughout the years, I've gained my experience by working with many different individuals, with many different businesses, persons that are starting out businesses or already have existing businesses, and estates. These different fields of areas I've been helping out and assisting people with in their taxes and finances.
Yes. So like I mentioned before, Josh has been helping me, or he's been like taking care of my taxes for the longest time. I can't even remember how long back. And like with starting up my business, like getting my business registered and all that stuff, managing personal taxes and business taxes, he's been helping me with all that. So I'm definitely like, okay, let's bring him on, because I know a lot of creatives. I know a lot of you guys are um, entrepreneurs. There's a lot more people, especially within the past year, that are stepping into the entrepreneurship realm. So they may not know exactly how to go about, setting up a business or doing the tax portion of it. So we're just here to talk about that. So I'll get into the first question. Um, real real basic. Throughout the year, somebody that's a entrepreneur or a creative, what are some of the things, like, besides pay stubs or invoices from work that they might have done, what are some things that they should hold on to throughout the year, because they're going to need to use it come tax season?
Right. So for an individual that is an entrepreneur working from themselves, also known they could be a contracting position, and this could be in various different fields. As you say, in the entertainment field, sometimes you might have to invoice the a producer or whoever you're working with, right? Also, it could work even in the hair salon business where you are, working with somebody as in a contract position. So there's very different entrepreneurs with, a wider range of things that they would be collecting what we would call their revenue for the year, right, from their business.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, they would want to, most of the times you would want to do an invoice for the services you're doing, but that's not always the case if you haven't been doing it throughout the year. So instead, like you mentioned, either you could get a check stub. So if you got paid by check, they would have issued you a copy of the check stub, which is what you would want to keep on record that would give us the total amount you received on revenue. Um, and other ways would be through other direct deposit slips or things like that. And I think majority of the time people are getting, receiving stuff through e-transfers and things like that. So at the end of the year, really their bank statements become a huge part of that record keeping, because that's where the information is found, is right on their bank statements. So
Right.
those are some of the items they would want to, keep on a monthly basis. So at the end of the year, they have it all together.
Right. Okay. So what about like startup expenses? Well, I guess we can get into that after, because I have another question that I guess is kind of related to that. But I guess receipts for startup expenses might be one thing that they can also keep.
Yeah,
And the reason why I say that is because I guess if you become incorporated, um, then maybe there's certain things you can write off. But before I go to that,
absolutely.
what are like the requirements to setting up a corporation or becoming incorporated, um, versus, yeah, what are the requirements, or what's like the better avenue? Because I know there's like, you could be incorporated, or you can do like sole
Yes, yes.
proprietorship, or like the partnership.
Right,
So
right.
what's the best avenues for maybe a creative, for example, that's working on their own? Maybe they're working as a working actor or a director or like a content creator, and they work with different brands. What would like be the best avenue for them to go, and what are the requirements that they need to be to get their business set up?
Right. Okay. So, like you said, we'll come back to the expenses part, and that is important to talk about in terms of an investment, right? Just like any other investment, as you're saying, if you're gonna start a business, that's an investment in yourself, in your business, right? So, the key is then tracking what you're putting into the business, because just like any other investment, you want to know what you're investing, and then what can we utilize for that for tax advantages and things like that. So as you mentioned, we will come back to those points. But as we are talking about just structuring a business, so somebody may have a good business idea and they want to know how do I get this going, right? So there's two really, you mentioned really all three main structures, which is the first is a sole proprietorship, right? Which is you are your business, right?
Mhm.
And then there's partnership if you're working with somebody else, right? Then the business is like a 50-50 share. And then you have corporation, as you mentioned, which a corporation is a separate entity from yourself. This is what is viewed by CRA in the government, that a corporation now is essentially, even though it's your business and you are the shareholder and owner of it, it's still a separate entity from you. So if a person wanted to go ahead and wanted to start a business, they would want to, distinguish a couple factors of, what would make sense. How they should structure that business. If it should be a sole proprietorship, or if it should be a corporation. And some of the things they would want to think about to start is depending on the field of business, like you said, if they are in the entertainment field, or in these various areas, they might think, okay, to start, in a in, to start a corporation, you would want to maybe think liability reasons, or for maybe future tax planning reasons, right?
Mhm.
When you're first starting out in business, you might not need a corporation, right?
Right.
Because if there's nothing that you could be liable for, you might not be thinking about that in legal stuff. So that would be something you would discuss with a lawyer, that if you feel like in what you are going into business, if there was some kind of liability or legal things that you may have been concerned about, that could be a first reason for a corporation.
Right.
But
Okay.
if you are just starting out in business, like you yourself, you have many ideas of, hey, this is a good business idea and I want to start this type of business in this field. So
Mhm.
what we do is we would like to, normally you would just start as a sole proprietor, right? And the reason is because you start as a sole proprietor to see how the business will grow, right? When we look at the stats, in the first 3 years of business, businesses sometimes normally fail,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because again, there's risk to business, it's an investment, right? So then we have to think, okay, we're taking a risk here. So sole proprietorship is a great way to start out, and it's a lower cost to than having a corporation. Okay. Once you start a corporation, now, as I mentioned, that's a separate entity from you. So now there's more administrative cost to it, right? And there's separate tax returns that are involved with corporations as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the complexity of a corporation, I would say, is it's a great thing and a great thing to have, but when you're starting out, you kind of want to distinguish what do I need? What's based on my needs? What makes the most sense? A sole proprietor, a partnership, or a corporation?
And for so those are good points. So they have basically have to think of like what basically what their business entails, and if they think they'll be liable for things, then maybe they want to go the corporation route. So in case if anyone wants to sue you, they can't really sue you and like it affect your personal things. It will just be suing the corporation. Or the corporation can file for bankruptcy, for example, versus you yourself. I guess that's the difference
Exactly.
between sole
Yeah,
proprietorship and corporation.
it's a liability thing, right? So as you're saying, the liability is in a corporation, the liability is limited to the corporation because it's a separate entity. So they could only come after the corp versus if sole proprietorship, it's unlimited liability. They could come after you.
Right.
But again, that's not always the case depending on what business you're in. Or
Mm-hmm.
is you might not have that kind of liability. So then more you're just thinking now about taxes. Okay,
Right.
how is this gonna affect my taxes at the end of the year now?
Right. Okay. So what would be well, I guess the next question I was going to ask was what would be some of the pros and cons of registering an incorporation, but we kind of covered that in that question. It has to do with like liability, it has to do with the nature of your business, and I guess those are some of the pros, like we said. um
And the cost involved in incorporating is
right.
higher than
The cost involved in incorporating is higher than with the sole proprietorship. Cool. Okay, so
absolutely, yeah.
what are, and I guess some of the things that they would need to do that is if they were going to register as a sole proprietorship, is they maybe just need like what their past tax return, or they need, obviously they need a social insurance number. Like what are just some of the key maybe documents that they would need?
Okay. So when you're registering a sole proprietorship, you are your business. So you and your business are the same, right? So all you're doing is really just registering your business name with the province of Ontario. So there's an application process that as you mentioned, you would just the same information that you mentioned you would put on the application, and then you would make sure that business name you're securing it, and then essentially that's the same business name you're going to use to on your personal tax returns, or if you need to get a HST number, you would start to use that your company name that you have started under yourself, right? But
Okay.
this is a process, an application process you would do through the Ministry of Ontario.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. So I guess to go back to the question I had before, what are now that their business is registered and now they're working as a first time entrepreneur or creative, what are some of the things that they can write off under their business?
Absolutely. So as we were mentioning um, at the very beginning, that question about what they collect to in terms of what they made for revenue. And now this question, as you're mentioned here, what are they able to deduct? This is very vital now, right? Because what happens is that whatever you make in your business, every dollar you make, you are supposed to included on your tax return at the end of the year. So if you did your business, right, and you made about $30,000 in your business this year, right? You're supposed to declare that on your tax return. But the difference is then when you receive your paycheck is when you receive your paycheck from your employer, taxes are already deducted from your paycheck,
Yeah.
right? So you don't have to pay. So at the end of the year, hopefully you won't have any taxes owing as long as enough taxes being deducted from your paycheck. But now as a sole proprietor, as your own business owner, there's no taxes being deducted from that income you're receiving as a contractor or in the business you're doing. So what happens is when you claim that income at the end of the year, it's going to be taxable.
Mm-hmm.
So the one way you reduce taxes is by, as you're saying, is having expenses that will offset that revenue for the year.
Right.
And that net income is now what becomes taxable to you. So if you had just collected, as we mentioned, all of that revenue items that just shows your revenue for the year from the business, but no expenses, now you're just paying taxes on that full amount.
Mm-hmm.
But you're allowed to, based on the income tax act, you're allowed to have expenses that we're going to go through right now that you're able to deduct against that income. That would say if you have 30,000, you had $20,000 of expenses, now you're only paying taxes on the 10,000, the net
Right.
income of that business. Okay. And that's why record keeping and tracking your receipts, as you mentioned earlier, is so important, because you want to be able to say, I actually spent money on my business and that was part of these business expenses.
Yeah.
So the different expenses that people may want to track throughout the year are things that are related to advertising. So if they're advertising through it could be through Google or the newspaper, whatever that may be, they want to keep that records of that expense, right?
Mm-hmm.
They might have to pay for memberships to things, subscriptions, right? To be a business in business. Sometimes you have to pay for licenses to be in business. So these are things that you could also write off. There's insurance sometimes you have to pay. Again, in the business that you're in, you might want to protect yourself, or you may need some type of insurance for that business you're in, right? So that's also, if it's related to the business, can be offset. If you have a separate bank account for the business, this is also bank charges and stuff like that are also deductible expenses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Accounting, bookkeeping fees that you may have to pay, right? Maybe you're using QuickBooks, right? Some these kinds of subscriptions can be also be deductible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even let's say when you go for meals with clients, right? When you have to go out for meals with clients and take them out, these are also deductible expenses related to your business when you're meeting with them in a restaurant setting or such like this,
Right.
right? And then you may also have your telephone, other utility expenses. And then, I mean, these are just expenses that maybe people don't think of. You might
Yeah.
only capture your supplies. Like if you're selling some type of inventory, if you're buying, some kind of, t-shirts or
Products.
these kind of
Yeah.
stuff in your products and you're selling, you might only be capturing that. So that is your cost of goods sold. And of course you want to keep receipts of all that. But then you also have your operating expenses, which is what I was just going through in detail,
Right.
right? And those other operating expenses could also include the vehicle expenses from your car. You need to use your car to travel, to do business. So you're able to write off a portion of that based on whatever you're using for the business from your car expenses, as well as from your home. If you're working, using your home office, your
Mm-hmm.
studio, such as yourself, as part of your business, these are all portions that you're able to write off to help deduct against that any revenue you might have received for the year.
Yeah, and that's very important. Like you said, a lot of people don't really know. There are things that they can write off, and those are some of the benefits of having a business actually registered and incorporated. I know some people may not think, because their business is just starting off, they may not think that they want to register because it's a small business, so they're just gonna try it out. But even if you're just trying it out, you're probably still gonna have expenses at the beginning. So might as well just do a simple sole proprietorship, and so that way, if you do have expenses, you can
Absolutely.
write those things,
Ab-
off.
Absolutely. Because as you're saying, if you didn't, you might just think about making the money and you're not tracking your expenses. And you're right. I do see that a lot where they would come to me and they've already started the business, but they didn't keep proper record keeper of this expenses. And then what happens is, look, the government may only find out about the revenue. They don't know about your expenses.
Yeah.
So now you're getting hit with the taxes for all that income you might have received, but now you can't show the expenses to help deduct and offset that. So
Right.
that exactly what you're saying can put you out on tax dollars you could have saved if it was just proper record keeping and knowing, like you said, knowing what am I able to deduct, right?
Knowing
And by
yeah.
working with a proper accountant or a bookkeeper or tax professional, they would help guide you in what you would be able to deduct in your business, because every business is different, right? In your field, what you're able to deduct is much different than what I'm able to deduct in an accounting office. So
Right.
it's all applicable to the business, and of course, as long as it's in line with your business and it's justifiable, then it makes sense. And as you mentioned, even in a corporation setting, without
Hmm.
proper record keeping, remember we're talking about your business is your investment, right? So if I'm now in buying all these things for my business, buying all these supplies and equipment, and I'm not keeping proper records of it, and now I'm starting to make money in my corp, right? Eventually, when that money's sitting in the corp, I can't just go take it out. I have to run a proper payroll, because remember, the corp is separate than myself,
You're right.
right? So just like any other corporation, you are now the employee of your corp and you have to pay yourself accordingly and submit the taxes to the government.
Hmm.
But what will happen is, if you invested significantly into your corporation and your business, you would have created a shareholder expenses, which would be like a shareholder loan that the company borrowed money from you, the shareholder, right?
Hmm.
So eventually, when the corporation does have money, you would be able to take that money back out without having to pay any taxes on it, because it's the capital that you've already invested into your business. So
Yeah.
these are the proper structures when you want to think about strategizing and opening up a business or corporation. These are the things you need to structure and strategize about.
For sure. Exactly. And these are the things that people need to start thinking about early on in their business. And like I said earlier in the video, because of the pandemic, because of 2020, because of so many people losing their 9 to 5, a lot of people have woken up and realized that, shoot, I need to like find something for myself. I need to do something for myself because they can't rely on other income. So a lot of people have started businesses because of the pandemic, or because of like insecurity with the job market. So that's why a
Absolutely.
video like this is important to know, like, okay, cool, you can do that, but how do you go about it the right way? And the information that we're talking about right now is within the Canadian context. If you're watching from a different country, it might be different, but relatively, I believe it's all relatively similar, but in terms of little things here and there might be different. So I get the last question I'll ask you. I don't know if there if there is such a thing, but are there any like tax credits or benefits that a newer entrepreneur could take advantage of? For example, like first time home buyers could take advantage of like the 5% down payment type of thing, right? Is there anything like that for like entrepreneurs or newer business owners, or does that not exist?
Yeah, good question. And I just want to hit on that point, as you said, with COVID and everything that's going, yes, a lot of people were able to start businesses virtually, and I believe it's a great opportunity, a great time to start a business in the climate, in this environment. Um, just with everything that has a lot of changes and all that, but it is absolutely a great time and opportunity if you are thinking about starting a business and investing into that. So in terms of um wait, I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
I was saying, is there any like tax credits or
Oh yeah,
anything
tax
that
credit. Okay.
a newer entrepreneur or business person could take advantage of?
Yes. Okay. So in terms, and yeah, you brought up an excellent point. Like, there's always some kind of incentives, just as you said, when you're a first time home buyer, they give you tax credits there.
Mm-hmm.
And, from a tax point of view, from like a CRA point of view, you are essentially the entrepreneur of your business. Okay. So essentially, as the entrepreneur of your business, you're taking that risk. And a lot of times, yes, a lot of times when the people I'm doing like their taxes and they're starting off as sole proprietor or whatever, and they're, you know, maybe you don't, like I said, you might have not made money. So they were like, hey, am I getting a refund? Or they did actually make money in the business, and then they're still asking me if they're getting a refund. But again, as I was talking about earlier, if you're making money, it's more that it's going to be taxable and taxes owing. And of course, during difficult times like now, cash flow is an issue, is an issue, right? So um but I do believe if you're getting into business, you're an entrepreneur, and you must understand that you're taking a risk. So the government doesn't have a necessary like a incentive that they will just give you something, and in terms of a tax perspective and based
Mm-hmm.
on the income tax act, that would just be like a first time home buyer's credit. There's nothing in that sense that I know of in the income tax act. But the income tax act does allow, like, as you invest in your business, it might have a loss in that first year, and you're allowed to carry forward those losses. Okay, so when you are essentially making income in those other years, in those future years, you're able to deduct those losses against those income. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so there's still structure within the income tax act and an incentive for you to do business and be profitable, but there's nothing there to say, hey, here's just a free giveaway in your income tax act. And I know a lot of times people do ask me that, but unfortunately there's not, because you are taking the risk as the entrepreneur.
Right.
But there is still incentives that will allow you to, whatever losses you have incurred, you would be able to carry them forward into future years to deduct, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that, and but there are other, like, there are like BDC, and there are other different business grants and organizations out there that are giving monies away to, subsidies, grants to starters, entrepreneurs in their different fields and careers. So if there's nothing in the income tax act, but yet there's tons of other stuff out there that if you look and you research, you might be able to find something that would help you out
Some
in
type of
starting your business.
grant or something.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that's really good information. Yeah, those are really good key points. I definitely think if you are starting out a business, or you know someone that's starting out a business, this is a point, a good jumping point to start off on. Again, this is speaking from a Canadian context, because we were using certain words like CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, all that stuff. So if you're from somewhere else, you would have to speak to whoever, a CPA or whatever from your country. But it's still good information. So if anyone has any further questions for you, can they book a consultation with you? Like, where can they contact you if anyone has any further questions? Where can they contact you?
Absolutely. Yes, if you would like any further questions, or and anything we've talked about today, or you're thinking about starting your business and how to go about and structuring that, you could check out my website at joshuabacchus.ca, right? And you could drop me a message on there, and I would definitely follow up with you from that.
Yes, so I'll put the link below to his website, joshuabacchus.ca. So if you have any further questions, if you yourself are looking for an accountant and maybe you're in Ontario or in the GTA, um, and you are have been searching, because sometimes people have been doing their own personal taxes, but when it comes to like business, adding business stuff, it gets a little bit more complicated, so they may need someone else to help them. So Joshua would
Absolutely.
be a great person to contact. So I'll put the link below if you are interested, or if you just have any further questions in regards to that. But that is all the questions I have for you today, guys. Thank you for tuning in again. Make sure, I'm gonna say it again and again and again and again and again. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video. Even more than liking and commenting, make sure to share so other people can see it.
Yes.
And yes, this is very helpful. Thanks again for coming on my channel. If you
Thank
guys
you
like,
for having me.
thank you so much.
I
Thank you. If you
appreciate it.
guys have more ideas or more topics kind of like this to help out entrepreneurs or newer creatives, comment below or send me a DM on my IG saying, hey, can you talk about this, or can you get, and then we'll try to work it out. All right. But yo, thanks so much again. And like always, I'll see y'all next time.